Well, I just found that vulnerability for me was a key to freedom. When I shared the stuff that I held as shameful, I realized that, people don't necessarily hold it the same way that I do, in contempt or judgment necessarily. There's actually a lot of empathy that emerges that surprised me when I actually started to share the stuff that I thought was shadowy and unlovable. And the next thing you know, it didn't have power over me.
Welcome back to The Ground Up Show. That's Quddus Philippe. These days, he works to help transform and level up people's on-camera presence by helping them dig deeper. This isn't about the surface level stuff like making sure you look good on camera or that your shirt is ironed. This is about finding blind spots and really being able to be your true self, to be truly confident in front of a camera or in front of an audience. On this episode, we talk about his early days as the host of MTV's TRL, a show that I grew up watching, his career as an actor and TV personality, as well as music video director, and he even works me through a personal one-on-one coaching session to help me with my interviews and my own on-camera presence. It was definitely a learning lesson for sure. But before we get to that, I've got some news that I'm still processing in this moment. Over the weekend, I went away to Joshua Tree, to my sister's place, to just kind of relax and get off of the computers and get away from notifications and distractions and all that, and just kind of take a break. And of course, I found myself going back and checking my email this was Sunday morning, I believe. And for whatever reason, I was just pulled to it. I was like, all right, I'll just check real quick. So I checked, and this time it actually turned out to be a good thing. I saw somebody had messaged me saying, hey, like, oh my God, I can't believe what just happened. You're one step closer to getting The Rock on your podcast. And from there, I was like, I knew this was, something happened. I just started to get a little bit nervous, and I'm like, wait, what is this? What's going on? And then I didn't have Twitter on my phone, so I downloaded it. I go on Twitter, and I see that The Rock retweeted and replied to a post that I had made on, it was, I think, Friday. And I don't know. Like I said, I'm still processing what happened. I kind of freaked out. I went nuts. I couldn't believe it. Like, this has been a year in the works. I've been trying to get a hold of The Rock in any way possible. And I haven't been doing it in like a way that's spammy or gross or trying to hack the algorithm to get heard. This was just me every once in a while reaching out to him, making videos. You guys have kept along. If you've been listening to the podcast for even the past couple months, you know that I've been putting a lot of work into this. Oh my God. So he responds, and it was amazing. I've got a video on my YouTube channel if you guys want to check it out, where I break down exactly what we said back and forth. It's a matter of a 15-second or 20-second conversation between the two of us, and really only just 2 tweets back and forth. But it fires me up so much. I feel like I'm one step closer to getting him on the podcast. I don't know if I mentioned on this, but like, I've mentioned it on every other episode, but if you're tuning in for the first time, I've got this crazy goal to get The Rock as a guest on my podcast. So you guys know what this means to me. This is crazy. This is insane. Okay. That's all I'm going to say about that. Go to the video on YouTube. You can check it out later, and you can see my reaction. My sister actually was recording pretty much the moment that I found out. So that was a lot of fun. Anyway, not to distract from this episode, which was truly an amazing special episode, one of my favorites so far. Quddus is so brilliant, so intelligent, and he's got so much experience in the game of just media, coming from MTV years and years ago when that was one of the biggest media outlets in the world. Now we're just, media is fragmented so much. So our conversation really delves into so many topics that are valuable to creators today. So anyway, I'm going to stop blabbering. This is my conversation with Quddus. Enjoy the show. You're listening to The Ground Up Show, a podcast that inspires creatives to make meaningful content and pursue their passions. My name's Matt Diavella, and I'm a filmmaker best known for the Netflix documentary Minimalism. And I'm sitting down with creators to talk about their process, the lessons they've learned, and how to make an impact.
And this coffee's super tempting, by the way. I think I might actually have developed an addiction to coffee.
I definitely have one.
You've just come to terms with it? You're at peace with it?
Well, you know, like we were just talking about Rich Roll, like, and he actually makes a differentiation between like addiction versus, I don't know what you would call the coffee thing, but like addiction for him is something that's like negative, that really is a detriment to your life.
Yeah.
And I don't think that coffee is detrimental to my life in a serious way.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
It's
like
not crack. It's not crack.
Yeah. It's not crack. It's not, you know what I mean? There's all these studies that say it's good for you.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't really, it doesn't bother me that I require coffee to kind of get some energy going.
Yeah, totally.
At this point, and this actually is going to sound like an addiction, but it's the not coffee that is worse than the drinking of the coffee.
Oh, gotcha. So when you're not on coffee, you feel
I'm like
shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it just brings me to neutral, and that's definitely an addiction.
Definitely.
Anyway,
by the way, another person I know that you've interviewed, Luke Broderick.
Oh, no way.
The choreographer
yeah.
dancer. We toured through South America together with the Jonas Brothers.
Oh, wow.
I was doing a documentary project with AOL where the idea was that I was going to be like a fly on the wall, and I was going to kind of give the fans a different access for a tour experience. And so I was shooting with, remember the flip cam?
Oh, yeah, no, I did that in college. I was like, I would run around in parties and shoot.
Yeah, so we had a proper crew and also me with this flip cam. So it was like this combo of both vantage points. And Luke was one of the guys I remember connecting with, and a bunch of different people from the whole tour that we went through South America together for like a month. It was like a month and a half.
Wow.
It's a really wild ride. So when I saw Luke there, I was like,
Yeah.
that was the trifecta. It was Asher, Carolyn, and Luke.
That was it. You're like, all right, done.
Yeah.
Luke is great. He's such a good dude.
Yeah.
It's just nice to. That's the best part about like doing this kind of thing, and especially in person, is because then you make these connections. You meet people in person that you otherwise wouldn't. Like you can hop on the phone and I can ask 20 questions, but at the end of the day, I think it's about that connection.
For sure.
Well, anyway, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Of course.
Appreciate you being here. Where do we start? I don't know where to start, man. I don't know where to start because like your career, like you've been in the game and you've been doing your thing for a very long time. I remember watching your shit back in the day, like watching you on TRL, because at the time that was like it. You think about media and how it's changed today. It's wild how different it is. But back then, for people, my age at the time, being in high school, MTV was like it. I don't think you had any other platforms at the time.
The irony is that I grew up in Canada and I watched much music. So I actually became an MTV VJ before I had even really watched MTV. So all of a sudden, I was exposed to being in the center of the pop culture zeitgeist and having really no frame of reference for what I was stepping into. So it was a quantum leap for me and totally rattled me because I was not necessarily as confident as I am now back then.
Yeah.
And can you imagine a kid from Canada, 20 years old, having that kind of a platform? And it brought up every bit of insecurity. And I remember feeling like they're going to figure me out any minute now. I had impostor syndrome like you wouldn't believe. I'm like, I'm just happy to be here. Nobody figure out that I'm actually not really qualified for this job. And so, yeah, thinking back, that comes up first because that was the first wave of my experience with MTV. And of course, thankfully, enough time on camera had me settle in and get more comfortable in my own skin and enough feedback from people. But man, MTV was a really challenging time for me to own my worth. And being amongst people like Justin Timberlake and Jay-Z and Stevie Wonder on a daily basis has a way of bringing up insecurities in a really ironic way.
Yeah, right. Because at the same time, you're there, you're interviewing them, you're in the room with these people.
Yeah.
But there's got to be some insecurities because you're so young, they've accomplished so much, and then it's like, where do you fit in the mix?
Totally. So, yeah, it was a mixture of finding my way as a human in the world and also being in the greatest playground on earth at the time. Yeah. So I loved it. I definitely learned a ton about different types of music. At the time, I was such a diehard hip hop fan when I got on MTV. I remember the radio station where I was doing my radio show to start out my career. I was doing a show called The Breakdown Show, and all it was hip hop like Wu-Tang Clan and Nas, and we would clown stuff like Britney Spears and NSYNC. Next thing you know, I'm on TRL interviewing Britney Spears and NSYNC. So It confronted that part of me too that had some sort of purist hip hop elitism, really. And then I realized, oh, they're actually awesome people. And I started to open up to different types of music too. So it was a really great experience.
Isn't that what's cool about it? Is because I could find myself falling into that trap too. And even, but doing this podcast and starting to just doing films and interviewing people and from different backgrounds, and also being a creator, you start to judge people a lot less. You start to be like, that's, like, even if it may not be for you, you can still respect what that artist is doing. You can respect the craft. You can respect what they've been able to accomplish.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's why, I feel like you see a lot of people who, might hate and troll and criticize online. Yeah. And I'm like, those aren't the creators.
Yeah.
It's never a creator.
They're the critics.
Yeah. It's the critics, and it's the people that maybe deep down they actually want to be making stuff, but they're not. And that stuff comes out. But it's definitely nice to be in a position where you can, where you're making and also respecting other people's craft.
Totally. Yeah, it's real comfortable to be on the sidelines and see other people in the arena. I definitely think that's the comfort zone. But yeah, I do think that we're all creators at heart. I think we all want to offer something to the world, make it better than we found it. And I think that the people who are like you, creating movies like Minimalism, are the ones who are in the arena making a difference. So hats off to you, man. As you're like praising whatever I did at TRL, I'm like, let me tell you something about what Minimalism did for me, because I just watched the movie recently and my fiance, actually told me about the film a while ago and just been finding the time, but finally watched it. And it's such an important movie. I feel like we really do live in these times that people glorify stuff still. Even as a movie like yours is penetrated in my circles. And I think a lot of people still have this vapid need to validate something with things. And it's like so much different to be on the other side of that. I feel like at one point I definitely needed validation externally. And I'm just so grateful for things like Minimalism for helping to continue the journey of actually realizing what matters in life and really celebrating that, focusing on that. So thank you for that.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Really means a lot to me. I think that poll, and it's something that I've kind of stepped out of for a while. Of course, there are polls for certain things, and it's like new iPhone comes out. I'm not like, I don't have no emotion. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like the beveled edges are a little bit different or whatever. And so there is some of that. I think the biggest thing for me in the beginning was, it was like redefining my idea of what success was, just because, and this is like, it's probably at that age where I'm like watching TRL, I'm like in high school and I'm just thinking like, oh, like I need to do the XYZ before I could be happy. Like I need to achieve these things. I need to get the house, the car, and all this, then I'll be happy. And then for me, like learning about minimalism, I was like, the first thing was just like, wait a minute. Like, I don't have to go down that path. I don't have to do all that. I can actually just be happy. Because like, I had enough stuff. I had enough things to be happy at the time. So it's like, of course, there's stuff that I want to accomplish. I had goals and, some places that I wanted to go with my career. But at the same time, I'm like, I could still be content. I could still be fulfilled right now.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people have that drive for like, status is pretty big for a lot of people, right? It's like keeping up with the Joneses, and now it's tenfold because Instagram, Twitter, we see all this all the time, and everybody's presenting like the perfect image of themselves.
Oh my God, it's such a big illusion. Really? I don't know anybody that's posting the rawest and most vulnerable parts of themselves. It's still presentational vulnerability. It's like, let me give you this strategically because I know it'll open you up to whatever I'm selling on some level. And so,
no, dude, that's so true. It's like you just one single tear in the mirror coming down. It's like, how do you, that's a tough thing though, right? It's like, it seems like a big part of your work and what you're doing now is about allowing people to open themselves up and be in a vulnerable place.
Well, I just found that vulnerability for me was a key to freedom. When I shared the stuff that I held as shameful, I realized that, people don't necessarily hold it the same way that I do, in contempt or judgment necessarily. There's actually a lot of empathy that emerges that surprised me when I actually started to share the stuff that I thought was shadowy and unlovable. And the next thing you know, it didn't have power over me. And I got my power back from having those things in the closet. And And then I got to actually laugh at myself and not take myself so seriously. And so it's been a whole nother quality of life for me in that journey myself. So I know that being in the game that I've been in television and media, that there's no training to actually support people in becoming free of the things that hold us back from being transparent on camera and really who we are. I think there's some level of wanting to be right, be perfect, be in control, and garner the validation and applause and all those things that actually on some level do imprison us from who we could be altogether. And so that's what Camera Ready is. It's all about really becoming free.
Yeah, talk about Camera Ready too, like as a step back. Like when did you decide that this is something that you wanted to pursue and create, and how does it actually take shape in the real world?
So for me, there was a realization that happened when I was about to shoot a pilot with A&E at the time. And I remember the day before we started rolling tape on it, I had my dad in town, and he was in the green room with me, and the stage manager came, knocked on the green room door, and asked me if I wanted a rehearsal. This was my time slot to rehearse. And my dad was about to leave, and I felt pretty confident that I could get up there the next day and do the hosting job as I've always done for years and years and years. There's a little bit of arrogance actually in there. Mm-hmm. I was not aware that that was really what was playing. But yeah, I did not take the opportunity to rehearse. And so the day of, there I am about to go on stage for the singing competition show. And it had a lot of bells and whistles, a lot of things for a host to manage. And I realized just how unprepared I was about 2 minutes out from being on camera. And I went into a nervous breakdown. Like you would not believe. I felt like I was imploding, and I ran to the bathroom. I told the stage manager, give me a minute. I go to the bathroom, and I felt like I was about to collapse. And I went into the stall, and I sat there, and I held my head, and I was like, how did I get here? And that was a turning point that I realized there is something else going on here I have not addressed. And so I realized that through all of the success I had, I still hadn't actually gotten free of the things that would have me in a position that I felt unprepared. And so the question for me was then, how do I prepare myself and feel as confident no matter what the situation is? And so I ended up doing personal development trainings, and being a seeker of that freedom led me to doing a lot of different personal development work, whether it was a 10-day silent meditation retreat or a seminar or reading books like Conversations with God. I did a lot of different work that added up to me finally getting to a point where all I wanted to do was support other people to get to this level of freedom. And so I thought, well, I don't really see these kinds of trainings in the world that I've been in. And so maybe I can create a fusion, something that takes the best of that medium of self-actualization and create something that is for people who are interested in impacting their audience as confidently as possible. And so we created Camera Ready. My partner and I, we both had the same experience in television. She also worked in television for over 16 years and found herself privately insecure in a lot of moments. And so we decided, let's create something that really harbors and supports people to level up and become their best self on camera and any other scenario in life.
Personal development in general, I feel like a lot of people have like at first, they have kind of almost like a cringe, almost like a pullback. Yeah. I wonder why that is. And I had that for myself. And it's funny enough, like out of all the books to kind of get me into personal development was Neil Strauss's The Game. Just because I was like in college and not good with girls. And I was like, let me just check this out. Like I'll see what this is all about. But then it just kind of opened me up to like starting to improve and better myself. And I'm like, there are so many different ways that I could be a better person. I could show up in the world, and I can, work harder and do these things to actually be, the best version of myself. A lot of, I think, personal development and self-help get a bad rap.
Totally.
Because what's better than working on yourself and trying to show up in the world in a better way?
Totally.
So have you always had that kind of resistance to personal development before that? Because you were saying you kind of had this arrogance almost built up. Like, why would you ever pick up a book to try to learn how to become a better speaker? You're like, I've been doing this shit for years.
Yeah, at the core of it, when I think about it, we could definitely go down the rabbit hole of childhood and all the things that were influence there. But what it comes down to is I was really unwilling to reveal myself and actually say, I need some help. I need some help. I had a lot of pride and a lot of walls. And so it was all of that stuff that got in the way for me to just say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and eat a little humble pie and let it be delicious and partake in these amazing trainings that are designed to support me to break through stuff that I haven't been able to otherwise. I've been out here in the world, and even at a really high level of success, having been on national television and getting awards and stuff like that, it's like, well, if that doesn't amount to me actually feeling good, then what's it all worth? And so finally getting to that point with that breakdown that I had backstage at that pilot shoot, it was really a wake-up call. And so ideally, it doesn't take that for people to actually say, okay, I'm going to work on myself.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to come from that place. Ideally, it's just the desire to constantly level up, to always look at what is the next level and not feel like it needs to come from some breakdown. So really, it's a conversation of human development and how we can always evolve. Imagine just staying in a stagnant state and feeling like that, well, because I have a certain level of success, then I'll just stay right here and kind of plateauing. I mean, that's really the alternative to something like personal development. It can come in a lot of different forms. I mean, Camera Ready is technically professional development, but really we have a lot of ingredients of personal development. It's funny you mentioned Neil Strauss, by the way. He's actually a client.
Oh,
and
no
a
way.
friend. And a friend.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
What is the difference between doing the, like, if I just pick up Tony Robbins audio tape versus something like yours, which is more immersive, it's in person. What was your personal experience doing that? And then, what led you to want to do more of these kind of retreats?
Well, I think there's a difference between informational content and transformational content. And what we've noticed is that to break through to another level, it's quicker to do it experientially, to have an immersive experience, to not just be reading about it and conceptualizing about it or thinking about it, but actually having a practice ground for it and a place to experience myself as it, getting feedback about it, really having that playground. It makes all the difference in the world for the clients that we work with. And for me, I've seen it just work wonders. And I think you can get there by just reading books and listening to the audio of Tony Robbins. But I think it's just a rocket ship being able to do it amongst peers who are supportive and can point out blind spots. I think that's the biggest piece, is that it really is an arena that we can actually show up and in real time understand what our blind spots are. We all have them. So it's just whether we're opening up to a medium where we can actually have stuff pointed out to us in a loving way, ideally. I think sometimes people really get it twisted in terms of coaching environments. And sometimes those environments are a confronting place for people just inherently. Like if I'm going to put myself out there in front of people, there's something already kind of terrifying about that. But I do feel like what we do at Camera Ready is really making a point of creating an environment where we focus on what works more than anything. Because what we found is essentially what we're doing is providing a mirror, a feedback loop that we oftentimes don't really get in our real lives. I think sometimes we have friends who are making a point of telling us the things that we want to know. We want to know how we show up, what works and what doesn't. But are we having those conversations with the people around us and actually having the courage to say the things that would actually make a difference with somebody? Like how often do you make a point of saying to somebody, here's what I'm noticing not working? It's tough. It's a challenging thing because is the person coachable? Is it an arena for that conversation? Is there an opening for it? It depends on how you are. Are you somebody who is in demand for feedback and also curious and open and a space for somebody to really give you the honest truth? And so what we've noticed is there's a gap in that. There's not enough of that going on. So people are going about their lives unconscious to the things that we make them conscious about.
That's the one thing that I've noticed both in my professional and personal life has been like the only time I really, screw up so bad, or I look back and I'm like, how did that happen? It's because I didn't have the difficult conversation or I didn't communicate enough.
Yeah.
And like for professional stuff, it's like just over communicate, make sure the client knows very clear exactly when you're going to deliver and everything that needs to be done from, the point of starting to finishing.
Yep.
And the same thing in personal lives. And, a lot of times dating early on, there's almost you don't want to talk too much. You don't want to ask too many questions because you don't want to seem like you're too needy. But then when you're able to open up and you're able to have those difficult conversations and the conversations that may be uncomfortable or awkward, then you learn so much more. Yeah. And then all of a sudden kind of the walls start breaking down. Yep. And then, but it's a continuous process. It's continuous because you're never just there. You're like, okay, I asked all the questions I need to ask and now I'm done. Yeah. Certain things will creep in. There's certain walls that will probably start to build back up over time. Mm-hmm. And then it's just like your job to kind of keep breaking it down and keep asking questions and keep moving forward.
Totally. It's a lifetime thing. I still find myself behaving in such a way where it's almost as if I forgot every bit of what I teach at this point.
Right.
And I need to wake up, reset, and commit to it again. And it's a humbling thing, but it's a beautiful thing because it's like the magic of life. We always are at choice, and there's always the temptation to be other than our best self. And so it's like, how can we develop a discipline and support system to actually constantly be our best self?
In terms of, say, somebody leaves, there are workshops and retreats. Do you do both, or how does it work?
Yeah, so Camera Ready is a 3-day workshop that starts the journey. And then to follow up Camera Ready, we have a program called Level Up. And that's a mutual selection process based on how people show up in the weekend. But it's a really awesome 3-month journey that follows up Camera Ready. And so it's really a place to make sure we integrate everything that got done in the weekend. Because there's a lot of workshops where you'll pop out of the weekend and you'll feel all of this new empowerment, and you may not feel quite like that in a month. So what happens then? And so really for us, it's great to have a powerful weekend, but it's even more important that it actually impacts your life. And the results are there at the end of the day. And so Level Up is all about all of that and really integrating the results. And so it's the 3-day training, Camera Ready, and then Level Up as a follow-up, a 3-month journey. And then we have a training also for facilitators who are in development, who want to actually facilitate what we do. And so we're doing that as well. So it's awesome because we have a real container for people to really constantly find a new ground.
How long have you been doing it for?
It's been a year.
Oh, really? It's that new? Yeah. What have you learned? Because like before this, you didn't do much business entrepreneurial type stuff, did you? It was mostly like the hosting, acting, and I think you did a little bit of directing.
Yeah, I did some music video directing when I was doing some A&R work with Interscope and MySpace Records. And so for me, it was the very first time that I created something from nothing, from the ground up. Because I think having a production company just for tax purposes is different.
I like literally the best thing I did for my business was instead of being Matt Diavella videographer, it was being at the time Black Box Films. And it's like, because then clients will pay you more money, and it's like, but it's still like, it's just me. Yep. And it's not really, it doesn't feel like a company. It doesn't feel like a business. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so what did you learn like over the past year, just kind of getting into it?
Tons. I've learned a lot about the importance of asking a lot of questions of clients. So making sure that not only on the intake, but also on the outtake, what's going on for them? Like, why are they coming to the training? What is the objective they have going in, their expectations? And then what happened for them? What actually got translated into their experience, and all of that feedback on the back end. So really importance of, on both sides of the experience, getting as much information about what was absorbed, because we've designed the training, we facilitate the training, but we've never actually taken the training. So unless we get really curious about the experience, then there still might be some blind spots for us. So as we are always preaching about the importance of being open to feedback and a demand for feedback, the importance of feedback is something that we also value for ourselves in the business and how we run our training. So that's probably the top line of what we're learning, is just how it's always available when we ask.
And what about, it seems like your top priority is just literally like focusing on the changes that you're making, the transformations that you're looking to make, and that the relationship with the clients, which I think the most important thing. When the actual business side of things and actually like creating the structure and like going about all of that stuff, who did you go to for advice, and like what was some of the things that, because I'm sure you're the kind of person, and I remember I did this when I started a podcast. I'm like, hey Josh, how do I do this? Like what would you suggest like are the first 2-3 steps? So it's like, how did that actually start to materialize into a thing?
Well, we are a coaching company that actually believes in coaching for ourselves too, for business. And so we hired a business coach, somebody that we had referred to us, and we hit it off in our first meeting. And so we've gotten support from her for almost a year now to make sure that the structure, all the business elements are there. And so we have some proper scaffolding for what we're building, because what happens in the room is one thing with our clients, but then there's all this other stuff, the administrative stuff. And yeah, we're learning
Taxes.
still. Oh my God, it's a good time.
You know what? That's the thing. It's like, I talk to so many entrepreneurs and freelancers, and I'm always like, so like, are you like pretty good with your receipts and how you like organize everything? I have yet to meet somebody who's like organized with their taxes and their receipts. I would say I'm probably the most organized, but even then I still have this like, oh, like I didn't, keep that receipt from that time I went to Wendy's when I was on the road like 3 years ago. The IRS is going to find me. Hopefully they don't listen to this podcast, but yeah, it's like you really have to, I think, take control. And like, if you don't like doing that stuff, or if you don't have experience doing it, find somebody else that can. Obviously, in the beginning, it's hard for a lot of people. It's like, if you're just starting grassroots, you have no money, no funding, no nothing. You can't hire a business developer. You got to do it all yourself and really immerse yourself. But you just got to take the time to learn it.
Totally. And it's great, actually, to make a point of learning all this stuff, because now, as we're building out the team, I can talk intelligently about all the elements that I've been doing for the past year, rather than just delegating and having no idea what it actually is to implement the things that I'm asking of them. So we can really walk through it together, and I can say, well, this is what's worked and what hasn't worked in the business so far. And so it's a different kind of dynamic. So right. I'm glad that we've really taken the time to lay the foundation down ourselves, and then now we're building out the team. So it's all a big learning, and it's definitely going to ease the process to have more people a part of the party. That's for sure.
What are the kind of clients that come to you? Is it all people that are, in some kind of hosting or acting type position? Or are you seeing people that are like, just, hey, I make YouTube videos and I do this and that?
Well, it's a media training. So we get anybody who's interested in having a more powerful presence on the media. So it's really everybody. We get everybody from tech entrepreneurs to actresses to poets to activists. So it's a real wide array of people. The thing that we look for, because it's a curation process, we make a real job of intentionally making the room full of people that actually inspire us. So it's not just that anybody can come. It's people who we really can get behind, people that we really feel like are up to something that is going to actually make a difference in the world. So I think that's probably the biggest common denominator, is it's someone who inspires us. And that can come in a lot of different forms, and does. But mainly it's entrepreneurs, educators, and artists, if I can nutshell it. Yeah.
Right. I don't know if you do a lot of one-on-ones, but like, say right now we were doing like a one-on-one coaching session. How does that play out? Like, what questions do you ask me? How do you go about that process?
The first question is, what would be valuable to focus on right now?
And in terms of, okay, so like we're going to be sitting down, and then you ask me, what do I feel like I need to work on?
Yep.
Like, where do I need to improve? We're actually going to do this now.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, where do I want to improve? I'm perfect, man. It's like, you're like, I get this all the time. That's it. That's the end of this podcast. You know what? I think like a lot of people, I do have a lot of insecurities, and I get anxious before interviews, and like I've done over 50 of them now. So I feel like I feel a lot better when I head into them. But it's like the unknown and the uncertainty. I prep and I have questions ready, knowing that when it doesn't really matter that much. I can prep 100 questions, but at the end of the day, if I really want this to be an authentic conversation, I need to throw those away and just kind of be in the moment. So I think it's the anxiousness of dealing with uncertainty is my big thing that I have struggled with. It's gotten better, you know what I mean? The more you do it, it's gotten better, but it's definitely something that comes up for every interview.
What if anxiety wasn't a bad thing?
Yeah, but it's bad. Well, why? How would I reframe anxiety to be a good thing?
So there was a study done, and it hooked up two people to the same roller coaster ride. So, all those things that people that are reading your body physiology hook up two people on the same roller coaster ride. One person had the exact same thing going on physiologically as the other person, and they interpreted it as, oh my God, am I going to die? Is this thing not going to work? Am I going to fly off the side of this thing? Anxiety. The other person, the exact same experience, the exact same physiological response, but they interpret it as, oh my God, it's the best ride ever. So what does that tell you?
Yeah, I see that it's just a reframing. And that's like, if you think about exercise and working out, I've thought about this before, where like I go to the gym, I work out, I'm in sheer pain while I'm lifting weights, but I don't see it as pain.
Yeah.
I see it as like growth. I see it like I actually enjoy that process.
Yeah.
But if I was just lying down and all of a sudden out of nowhere my muscles started hurting like they do during the middle of a bench press, I'd be like, "What? I'm dying. What's happening to me?" That's a tough one, man. I guess this is what you do, right? It's like the deep work. It's like, how do you rewire that though? How do you go about that process?
That's where the practice comes in, because if I'm able to actually notice that energy can be reframed as something that is actually fuel, I feel it too. And I've just practiced the interpretation that, this means that what's happening here matters. It matters enough that I care, and then I have all this energy about it, and it's here to support me. And it's not just a pep talk. I actually feel like it becomes like a fire for me to channel. And when I don't feel that, I actually wonder, should I be here?
Right.
Because there doesn't seem to be enough stakes involved. It doesn't seem to matter enough. And that's where I need to maybe check off my why am I here box. Why does this matter box before I even do it? And then create some motivation for myself and some energy for myself.
Wow. Yeah, that's so true. Imagine like, if before, say before any interview I do or anything I'm doing that's kind of pushing myself further. First of all, if I didn't feel anything, if I didn't have a little bit of anxiousness, anxiety, we could call it, we could actually rephrase and say excitement, right? If I didn't have that kind of excitement for what I was about to do, that's like called being stuck. You know what I mean? Like when I was doing wedding videos, like there was a point where like it was exciting to go out and shoot something and create this thing, and it was a lot of fun, but then eventually it got to a point where it was like, I didn't have that excitement anymore. Yeah. And it was like, all right, what can I do next to kind of push myself a little bit further?
Totally.
So yeah, if it does come to a point where doing these interviews or anything doesn't have that element of excitement, then maybe that's the time to kind of step things up or think about it differently.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a great compass, actually. I actually see fear as my North Star. I seek it out now. So there was skydiving that was offered to me a couple of years ago, and it was something I was always terrified about. I thought, why am I going to jump out of a plane? What the heck? What kind of a crazy suicidal thought is that? And sure enough, a friend of mine invited me to something that was just too good to say no to. It was everything set up. It was for a good cause. I was like, okay, I'll go.
Yeah, God damn it.
So there I am at the skydiving place. Yeah. And of course, I'm sitting there in the lobby as they prepare us, and they're playing us this video, this orientation video going down the line of basically what we need to be mindful of. And the guy who's talking about it looks like a serial killer. And I'm like, this is not helpful at all. And so the anxiety keeps building,
Yeah.
And so there we are getting strapped in. And so the guy who's going to be on my back and actually pulling the chute then starts telling me about his experience. And he says, I'm glad you feel this way too, because this is my first day, and actually I'm a little nervous too. And I go, okay. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, is there another guy that could be on my back?
Is this serious?
And he starts cracking up, and he's obviously messing with me.
Damn.
And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. Now I got a joker
who's
going to be on my back. And sure enough, though, that experience was so defining for me, because I remember being up there. It was one of the highest drops in North America, actually. It was 18,000 feet. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was about to jump out of this plane and the rush of energy came over me. And it was completely illogical to think that this is going to equate to me dying.
Right.
Because this is something that hundreds and thousands of people have done. And so I don't have that thought, though. I just remember feeling terrified. I remember feeling all the fight or flight, like a damn bear was about to tear my face off, and I was surely going to die. The chute was not going to work, and I was going to be splattered all over the floor. And then I jumped with this guy on my back, and I definitely felt that feeling as the wind was blowing up in my face, and I'm like, surely I'm still gonna die. And then the chute gets opened, and I just remember feeling like oh my God, I just robbed myself of potentially the most exhilarating experience of my life. And in that moment, I realized that that acronym that goes around like a cliche, that fear is false evidence appearing real, is something that robs so many of us of the nectar of life, like the most incredible experiences. Like those moments where you're on your first date and you had a great date, and for some reason you don't lean in and kiss her because that fear, that anxiety. So what if we could reframe that, and that actually points to the greatest moment of your life? Like that's the indicator. That feeling is not anxiety at all. It's like, oh, here we are.
Yeah.
This is the moment.
You need to step into it.
Yeah.
I had actually, you know, in part, like around the time when I was reading The Game and getting into that, like it was because I developed anxiety around dating, and like the longer you go without facing that, the worse and worse and worse it gets. And that's why people have like fear of heights or fear of jumping on a plane, whatever it is. It's because it's there, they have this idea, and then they're like, no, never going to do that. And then after 15 years of saying that, never going to do that, all of a sudden it's monumental. And then when you like even think about it, when you think about spiders, whatever it is, then your whole body just, you feel it, and anxiety will take over.
Totally.
You have to kind of catch it right away. And even like you're probably going to feel like, oh, it's probably too long at this point. Like at this point, I'm definitely never going to do a public speaking event. But it's like, no, you just got to do that shit right now, because then it's going to be way worse in 5 years.
Totally. Yeah. I go by this motto now that when fear is present, the teacher is in the room. It's pointing to something I get to learn and ultimately grow into, and it could be the most glorious thing. Why do we love the movies we love? Because it's somebody that's overcoming fear most of the time and winning the girl, or winning the championship, or vanquishing the other opponent, or whatever it is, right? But there's that breakthrough through fear. And so we get to be the heroes of our own movies.
Right. It's not absence of fear. The fear is there. Like the hero is scared, right? And they just have to get through it. And that's what makes them the hero.
That's exactly it.
So obviously for the past year, you've been doing Camera Ready. You do a lot of other stuff too. Like how do you go about finding that balance? And there's only so much time in the day to get the things done that you want to get done. So it's like, how do you prioritize, and how do you find your North Star for your work?
Thankfully, I have a fiance who is fierce about our work-life balance.
Yeah.
If it weren't for her, I would be 24/7 with it, because I love what I do. So I don't even see it as work, but I do see when we do take the time to go on a date and get an exhale from what we do with Camera Ready, that it supports the work, because then I feel refreshed, rejuvenated. I oftentimes actually have more clarity about things that maybe I've gone down the rabbit hole and been banging my head on a wall about. And now all of a sudden, because I take a break, it actually becomes that much easier to work. So I actually still rationalize it through the lens of how is this going to support work? Yeah, ironically, but it's
it's still.
But I do think that having someone in my life like her name's Carmina, and she's been a godsend, man. She's been amazing. The value of having someone like that in my life has been exponential, because I did have a major imbalance. Work life, there was no such thing. It was really all work. And so, she's been a big breath of fresh air.
It really is. I mean, finding a partner, somebody that, like you actually work together. Yeah. So, but for me and my partner, Natalie, we don't work together, but it's the support system. And like, whether it's a partner or if it's somebody else, I think a partner is easier because they live with you. They're there with you all the time. They see you in your good days and your bad, and they know when you're working a little bit too hard, or they can help and push you when you need a little bit of encouragement, when you're feeling doubt. That's it. But it's like, it's so invaluable to have that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of relationships now. I never thought I'd see the day, by the way, that I'd be such an advocate for relationships, because I was a chronic dater when I was in my 20s. Oh my God. It was a joke to some of my friends. They're like, how many dates have you been on this week?
Right.
6?
Yeah.
Did you go on like 3 a night? It was absurd. So and it wasn't like I was a playboy or anything. I actually didn't even.
Sounds like you were a playboy.
Well, it does sound like. I wish I had a lot of stories to tell on that note, but no, it was more so that I actually think that that's where I got my validation. Like the ability to just even get the date with the hot girl was enough for me to feel like, all right, I'm doing something. And of course I wasted hours and hours on dates that didn't result in anything. Right. But now thankfully I've gotten over that stuff that needed validation, and to have a woman like Carmina has been such a gift.
Yeah, it's. I think obviously, like when you look at the difference between men and women, I think we each go through different things, and I think that's probably one that's more like the male leaning side of things, where you feel like you need to go out and date. And we were talking about vulnerability. I think that's just something that guys have a lot of trouble with, like just opening up and being themselves, and being able to be vulnerable and own up when they make mistakes. Because
Why do you think that is?
It's like a very traditional worldview. It's those things that are part of our culture and society. Like you think about like the 50s and 60s, it's like that's every man was, or at least like 90%. It was way tipping the scale in terms of hold your emotions back, don't speak up, don't whatever it is.
It's not manly to do that.
It's not
man
manly.
up,
right? But it seems like it's part of like the growing zeitgeist now, and people talk about that, like just certain ideas kind of get out there, and like Lewis Howes just put out his book about it, and it's kind of taken off that mask and being vulnerable. Have you noticed that? Like it seems like people are talking about it more.
Oh, for sure. In our circles, I sometimes feel like it's a little bit misleading because we are in a pretty sweet bubble here in LA and New York. But yeah, I do think that there's an importance of it, especially now that we see a guy like Donald Trump in office, who is such an example of that sort of quintessential I'm right, you're wrong, domineering, control, power play guy that ultimately is just offending everyone right now. So I think he's like this glaring symptom of what the antithetical being a truly holistic, well-rounded human is. I mean, he's the guy that's just one big volcano, right? And I think that's like on the extreme side, the opposite of a vulnerable man who's able to express himself throughout the day in a healthy way, such that he doesn't have repressed emotions that come out in talking smack about another world leader. You know? So I think that in some ways it's a blessing that we have Donald Trump in, because he's showing us ourselves. He's a product of us. And on some level, I feel responsible that Donald Trump is in office. The fact that I have at times lost my cool and said something offensive to somebody and perpetrated some level of separation and judgment and all that stuff, it's like in the zeitgeist as well. Yeah. So I think it's like us collectively looking at where we've kind of hit rock bottom with that model of what it means to be a man. And now we get to really change things. We really do.
Yeah, and if you think about it, there's conversations now like this that we weren't having before he was in office.
Yeah,
that's.
We don't want to go political. I know
we don't. I don't. This is the first time I've ever got into it. But like, I'm in terms of like media consumption, like that it had me kind of going for a while, where like checking every day, checking the news. What the hell did he do today? Yeah. And then lately it's luckily I have work that I'm really passionate about that I love, and then it's a matter of kind of putting that to the side. And there's a balance between being informed and letting that information run your life.
Totally.
And it's like people that watch a baseball game and then all of a sudden their team loses, then they're depressed. They feel it inside. They've become so attached to the outcome of this game that other people are playing that it actually affects your well-being. Totally. And it's like, I get it. Like obviously, like if you're watching the World Series or a big playoff game, there's going to be that sense of heightened, emotion, but you can't let it just run your life, and you can't let politics and things that are outside of your control run your life.
Totally. Amen to that. It's tough though sometimes. I actually heard the other day from a Lyft driver I was talking to that they have in LA fitness gyms taken away what they were playing on the screens, on the TVs. They were showing Fox News. And because people were feeling so agitated as they were watching Fox News on the treadmill, they've taken off Fox News.
Yeah, it doesn't even need to be Fox anymore. It's just anytime you look at the screen, the news, and you just see like North Korea, Trump, you're like, God damn it, I can't get away from it.
It's absurd.
There's some gyms that like just don't have TVs. Those are my favorite. Like I'm trying to work out. Like I don't need to be like just sedated. Like
this is doing nothing for the motivation of me getting into this workout at all.
Right.
If anything, it might channel some anger, and then that would have me pump up even more effectively.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. It may push you a little bit. Yeah. Do you have like a workout routine that you're into, or do you
yoga? I just do yoga. Oh, yeah. And then once in a while I'll jog or play basketball. That's what I get for cardio. But yeah, yoga. And actually that's been such a big difference for me too with getting in front of camera, actually. And that's one of the biggest things I recommend to clients. If they don't have a yoga practice, get it, because that is like the greatest practice ground to notice our breath and how important our breath is as we move into these uncomfortable places outside of our comfort zone. And just the other day, I was going in to meet with a production company about a new show. And so they had the finalists that were up for this hosting job all going in front of the camera and doing a screen test and to see who's going to be the guy to host the show. And I remember thinking, gosh, I'm so glad I had my yoga this morning, because here I am feeling all the feelings.
Yeah.
And being able to breathe into them made all the difference in the world. And so, boom, oxygenating the brain. The importance of the basics in those moments makes a world of difference.
Yeah, I haven't, I've done like a little bit of like the P90X, like power yoga, like the manly man yoga.
Yeah.
I haven't like done legit yoga. I really want to. I like the idea of like having a workout routine that also helps to center you and kind of calm you down as much as it is a tough workout from what I've seen and heard.
Oh yeah, it's as much for my body as it is for my mind. It's my therapy.
Yeah. My family would never see the end of it, though. If I move out to LA, I start doing yoga. I did a 30-day vegan diet because Rich Roll was on the podcast. I was like, let me try vegan for 30 days. So I'm full LA now.
Oh, yeah. Just go ahead and embrace it.
Why not? Screw it. I don't know. I do want to try yoga, though. But it's like, I don't know.
It's been a game changer.
Has it?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, people that do yoga like on a regular basis, they speak very highly of it.
Well, I was so restless before I did yoga. I had all this anxiety, actually, and I remember understanding the value of meditation and wanting to practice it. I would sit down. I had a teacher teach me, and then I'd sit down, and inevitably I'd be so restless thinking about my to-do list that I couldn't get through 2 minutes of meditation. But yoga was the gateway for me to eventually get to the point where I could actually have a serious meditation practice, because I had at least gotten a handle on that calm and that centeredness that supports me to sit my butt down for more than 2 minutes. So, yeah. All of that is super valuable. It really is such a de-stressor, and it optimizes everything.
Yeah, isn't that such a problem? Like, you have a problem when you try to sit down. You can't sit down for a minute, 2 minutes without a thing, without like a screen or without just crazy thoughts just kind of popping into your head.
Yep.
And it's one of those things like you're saying, you gotta rebuild, relearn, and kind of keep going through these things.
Yeah.
Because I've had a practice before of meditation and a daily practice, and these days I don't do it as much. But then every once in a while, you shouldn't wait until you get overwhelmed to do it.
Sure.
But it was like I was like, I just need to sit down, relax, have some tea, and then meditate for 15 minutes. And I couldn't get through a minute. And isn't it crazy? Just like because it's the wiring of our brains.
Monkey mind. They call it the monkey mind.
Right. It just goes and goes and goes.
Yep.
And then so I think those kind of daily practices where you can kind of step back. Also, I was just talking about this with Natalie, was that I'm like, wow, like everything feels like it's going by so fast. Like shit, we've been in LA for over 6-7 months now. It feels like that was yesterday. And it's like, I just don't want to feel like my life kind of flew by.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Dan Harris was saying, was that like that helps, meditation helps, because it slows down your entire day. And if you bring that practice in every day, it's not going to feel like overwhelmed.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. That's the key, man. Yeah. Being present for our own life.
Right. You want to do audience question?
Cool.
I got a question here from Rick Brewer.
Great.
If you guys want to send in your questions, you can send them into hello@mattdivella.com. I've been doing videos, or people have been sending in videos.
Oh, cool.
Because, obviously this podcast is very much video focused. So
Yep.
I'm trying to get people to send videos. Cool. But obviously some people aren't camera ready. So if you want to send an audio, you can do that as well. Here we got one from Rick Brewer.
Hi, Matt. This is Rick Brewer from Bloomington, Indiana, and I am a radio producer. And I am also in graduate school for the humanities. And I originally came to graduate school with the idea of becoming an academic, getting my PhD, the whole 9 yards. But I discovered that radio and podcast production, my hobby, is what I truly want to do, and have been putting a significant amount of time into developing a portfolio, making connections in the industry, and so on and so forth. And I'm putting much less time into the academic side of my life, classes, homework, papers, etc. So I'm kind of conflicted. I feel a little guilty putting more time into my hobby and what my true career aspirations are, as opposed to what I came to university for. So I guess my question is, to you and your guest, is, do you have any advice about transitioning from one career to another, how to approach it? How do I go about sort of putting more time into my career or academics? So I guess I'm just really conflicted and was just curious about any advice about transitioning from one career to another. Thanks, Matt. Love the show.
Great. All right, Rick Brewer, what do you think?
That's a great question, because clearly there's an investment that he's made in the track that he's been on, right? The prescriptive traditional model of education, but he's finding this new passion. So it sounds like it's a really clear delineation. It's like this fork in the road. Do I go along with what I signed up for, thought would be valuable, and discovered not really igniting my passion? Or do I do the thing that's like clearly lighting my world on fire and I get excited about? And I always quote Joseph Campbell. He really boiled down all his work so simply for us: follow your bliss. And it can be that simple, because I think what gets in the way of it is feeling like we are tethered to our prior commitments, what we thought would be the thing. And then it's important to be present to our own life and what we're noticing and discovering in the journey, and realizing, oh, that ain't it. Once we identify that ain't it, being able to release the attachment is the key. And I feel like sometimes I just like getting physical with it, because I feel like I'm a visual learner. And I think that like when I'm attached to something playing out the way I think it's going to play out, I'm like this. I'm like gripping onto my expectation for it, my investment in it, my commitment to it. And then I'm not even open for new information, new realizations, new ground. And it sounds like he has the opportunity to really take it on and really absorb what he's receiving. He's feeling excited about doing this podcast, production, and it's not the humanities. Okay, well, humanities might not be for him to do.
Yeah.
And now he's getting that new information. So will he run with it? And I'm excited to hear about how he does.
Yeah, isn't that great? I really think he's gonna kind of put his head down and go for the passion. And that's like the whole thing, is that he's very fortunate too, because while it seems like he might be pot committed, right? We feel like we've invested so much into something, so we need to stick it out for the long run.
Yeah.
He's still, he's in graduate school, he's in college. Like, that's pretty damn early to figure out that you have a passion that you're excited about.
Yeah.
And I think the most encouraging thing I could tell him is that it's possible. Like, there's so many people that are doing it, whether in radio or podcasting, especially podcasting, because it's so easy just to get up and get started yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you can do it, and you can make money doing it. You can, really find something that fulfills you. And that's the important thing. And like, you don't need all the money in the world. You don't find like I don't know if you need to set a number or whatever it is, but you're like, people have this kind of expectation, like, oh, I just need all that stuff. I need to get all this money. But if you figure out like, shit, if I can make $50,000 a year podcasting, maybe it might be difficult to live in New York or LA, but like around there, I'm like, shit, that's all I would ever need. If I could just do this full time, I don't need all that extra stuff.
Yeah.
So,
like, you're proof, right? You're living the unconventional life, having a podcast, making films, doing all the things that he's saying he wants to do.
This is a work in progress, because I just made a transition, because that was like that thing where I'm like, how do I challenge myself next? How do I push myself? And it was, I had been a freelance filmmaker for so long, and then I stepped and did the feature-length documentary, and didn't get paid for it. We kind of invested, and we all said, all right, let's just put some money together and make this thing. And then
so you didn't make a profit on minimalism?
No, we did.
We did
after that, but it was before it. We just went into it. We like put $30,000 to $50,000 into it. Like, we all kind of pooled our money together. I took off time from client work, and then we put it out there. And then we did make our money back pretty quickly, actually. Like, it just surprised all of us, because we knew we had a niche audience, like a small audience that would be, the people that knew about minimalism already. But it was like, all right, can we open this up to a bigger audience? Like, well, people, and that's what I was thinking about the whole time. I'm like, I just don't want to preach to the choir. I want to be able to create something that if you never heard about it, you might be like, oh, that's interesting. I'd want to hear about that or learn more.
Yeah. Being a bridge.
Yeah. And then like, we did end up making a profit from it. So then that was an opportunity where I was like, okay, I want to do more of this. I want to make like stuff that I'm passionate about, that I'm excited about, instead of acting on other people's visions.
That's so cool. The fact that you took that kind of a risk and you got this kind of reward. It's like that's big for him too to hear, because I think that's what it means to actually let go of something. There's a risk involved.
Yeah.
So like really coming to terms with what that risk is. And in your case, you invested $40,000.
Yeah.
And you let go of money that you could have been making otherwise with other clients. And there was no promises, right? You at that point were not contracted by Netflix. You didn't have any sort of advance on the film or anything. So it's like a complete like jumping out of the skydiving situation and trusting that the net is going to come up.
Yeah, even these days doing the podcast, it's like the podcast isn't profitable at this point. And I don't expect it to be probably for another year. I don't know. I'm working on some courses and some stuff, so it may happen sooner. But I don't need it to, basically. Cool. I'm okay if I can still keep making this thing, and I've got a little bit of runway here. But it's definitely. I get clients like from my freelance filmmaking days, which were only 3-4 months ago when I really kind of put it on hold. Oh man, I've turned down like 6 figures worth of projects at this point, and I'm for no money, right? Where I'm like, I sometimes it's tempting. They're like, Matt, we got a lot of money. We want to do some really creative videos that are really exciting with the startup companies that I would have died for previously. Mm-hmm. And part of me is like, I should just do that real quick. But then I'm like, no, it's not where my passion is. It's not where I want to head, because you can only head, I think, in one direction. You know, you're going to do music videos or wedding films or whatever it is, or you're going to be a podcaster. Splitting it up and trying to go in multiple directions at the same time, I think it's only going to give you. You're not going to get the full return on your investment if you just take one thing and you're like, I'm going all in.
Spoken like the guy who made minimalism, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of value to what you're saying. I think that there's definitely something to be said about doing a few things and being able to have the diversification of one's portfolio. But I think that what you're saying is so true as far as that level of concentration that creates momentum. I think that I even noticed it as we put more focus on Camera Ready. At first, I was busy juggling a couple things, and now I'm streamlining it thanks to movies like Minimalism. I'm really stepping into that, and letting go of some of these other things that are tempting is so huge, because it opens up bandwidth to have more to give the thing that is the main passion. And I've noticed it really has changed my quality of life, let alone the product and the actual output of it. Right. So it's a twofold thing for me. I just noticed it's like lighter. I just have less going on, so it's like literally dropping off bags and having a lighter load. Yeah,
I think you're right though. Like I don't want to say like don't be multidisciplinarian. Like just do it one at a time, right?
Sure.
Like if you want to get good at this one thing, focus on this one thing, and maybe it's 2 months, maybe it's a week, but then really have your focus and say, this is what I want to master for this period of time, and then kind of shift gears. Because we all think we can multitask and do several things at once, but that's totally not true.
Well, I think there's something to be said about when things are complementary. If there's like a synergistic thing going on between a couple of things, they sort of live in the same world and they actually are feeding into each other. I think that's different. But if it feels like it's almost like you're having like a personality disorder, like multiple personalities occurring throughout the day, then that feels like it's like it can feel a little chaotic. I've definitely felt like all of a sudden I'm doing a million things, but if they can serve each other, like for me, I've been at the intersection lately with a new show that I'm hosting that's about to premiere, and also running Camera Ready, and so I was in the question of, well, can I take on this new show if I'm really launching Camera Ready right now? And so I said yes. I was open to the possibility of being able to do both, and it worked out because I felt like I could go host a show and then go back to my class and actually have real, relevant, very timely examples of what it is that I'm working with them on. So for me, that was a case of walking the talk and actually modeling, embodying the things that we talk about in Camera Ready and we explore in Camera Ready. So in that sense, I felt like it was a synergy. In that sense, it made sense for me to take on both.
Right.
And I didn't feel fractured.
Right. And sometimes we have, people like us, we're ambitious. There's a lot that we want to do. And sometimes that means putting in extra hours. Sometimes it means working early mornings and late nights.
Yeah.
I think that's a part of it. And I don't think that's something that you can escape, because even like the top performers, those that are, putting out best-selling books, whatever it is, even those that have a great balanced life, there will be times when you have a deadline and you just got to crush the shit out, and you got to put in a couple late nights. And I think there's a greatness to that when it's in moderation and it's balanced, and you're not just, doing that every single day, every single night, and wearing yourself down.
Totally. And I think the question of why are you doing these things? Like in his case, if we go back to the question of, do I stick with the humanities track, or do I really explore this thing that I'm passionate about? Well, why would he keep studying humanities? Why? Is it because you've already signed up for the thing, your mom's expecting you to finish, that kind of thing? Well, then get free. Do what you're feeling called to do. Be you. And then I think that can just be something that served you while it did or didn't, and be a footnote versus like the whole chapter. Right.
Totally. Let's wrap up here with some quick questions. It's quick questions, not quick answers. So feel free you can elaborate if you feel like you want to answer a little bit longer. But let's see here. What book has had the biggest impact on your life? Trying to get people reading.
Conversations with God.
Tell me about that book. I haven't even heard of it.
Well, it's certainly not religious.
Yeah.
So everybody can just relax on that note.
Yeah.
It's really about a personal journey and a really intimate relationship with God that is beyond religious institutions and dogmatic perspective. And this writer, Neil Donald Walsh, wrote from the perspective of actually having a conversation with God. And so it occurs on one level a little bit blasphemous for people who feel like, well, unless you're a man of the cloth, you can't have a conversation with God. But reading the book, it's really powerful. And it actually feels like on some level he did. And so I remember I had a really hard time swallowing what my dad was throwing down my throat about the church and needing to go to church. And it's a very dogmatic upbringing. And I get that he had a definition of being a great father, being that I needed to go to church. And if he didn't do that, he'd be failing as a father. So I get where it was coming from. He was raised in the church and just didn't break the cycle. But I really had a hard time with it, and I definitely resisted it. And so a book like Conversations with God was a really great disruptor for me. And it was an entry point for me to understand faith and believing in something other than what we see and what's scientific, but we all experience. I think that spirituality is something that is such a powerful thing. And I always pray that people can find their own journey that isn't something that is just prescriptive and feels inauthentic and just feels like, gosh, this is the thing to do. And I don't really believe it all together. So for me, Conversations with God was really my first understanding, like true understanding of what faith could be for me. And it's really, really transformed my ability to move in the world with some kind of confidence in something beyond what I see.
I love it. There's actually a new doc out called The Heretic. Have you heard of Rob Bell?
Yeah.
Love
Rob Bell.
Yeah, he's incredible. I'm trying to get him on the podcast. I had the director Andrew Morgan on the show.
Oh, cool.
He did The True Cost as well, just about the fashion industry and clothing. But I just went to the premiere a couple weeks ago. That's a great doc. It's out now, so if you want to get it, it's on iTunes and all that stuff. But he's got that message too, where it's like, wait a minute, you're telling me like, because I grew up like Catholic, and you're telling me that it's, you can teach spirituality and religion in a completely different way. And I'm still an atheist, but I can still like hear his message and it resonates. And, there is a connection there to those ideas, and it helps me to think a little bit deeper about my place in the world.
Yeah, I think we should be able to question all the things that have just been propagated over the years and not necessarily questioned. I remember growing up, I felt like if I asked a question about something in the Bible, that I was going to get yelled at. And so I stopped asking questions. And so when I picked up Conversations with God and Neil Donald Walsh was asking all the questions that I had burning curiosity about, that was a game changer for me. Yeah. And that's really what the value of the book is it explores all those questions that we all have. So that's cool. Yeah.
What drives you?
What drives me? At this point in my life, really wanting to support other people to be their best self. I know it sounds a little bit cheesy, but it really is my motivation. I feel like I've had a great life, and I've been blessed, and I'm super grateful. And I really do think it is the responsibility of people like us that are blessed in this way, that are in the 5% that get to broadcast and drink water readily, and all the things that I think in North America we take for granted. It's our responsibility to be lighthouses for people who are still finding their way. So that's what drives me.
What's the simplest advice that's the most important to follow?
Breathe. It's going to be okay. I really believe that when those times of tension and suspense come up, the first thing that happens is forget to breathe. And then inherently we're behind the 8 ball. We're not physiologically set up to win because we're not oxygenating our brain to actually function. And breathe. It's going to be okay.
All right, one thing to read, watch, or listen to before my audience goes to bed tonight.
Whew. Wow. One thing. Well, they haven't watched your movie. Watch Minimalism. Come on now. It's shameless, but I'll say it. What's a piece of content that I really think is awesome? Oh, man. There is a great YouTube video that's a compilation of Will Smith's wisdom. Have you seen it?
No.
But he's
on YouTube now, man. He's killing it.
Crushing it.
Yeah.
But there's some video that I think some fan of his put together. It's a compilation of all these snippets from interviews, maybe even snippets from his movies, and it just goes boom, 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 boom. It's for like 6 minutes of just jewels, just wisdom, bombs from Will Smith and all the cool, amazing, charismatic ways that he delivers this stuff. And yeah, that is a really, really insightful and motivational and entertaining way to get the keys to life.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, Will Smith is so good.
Yeah.
I know that there's been some like interviews and clips I've seen from him that I'm like, oh shit, like I can do anything.
Yeah, totally.
He's so inspiring.
Yeah, it helps that he lives it, really.
Yeah. You said you have a show that's coming out?
Yes, so it's a brand new show on a brand new network called 420 TV. 420tv.com, and the show is all about the entrepreneurs of the cannabis industry.
Oh, cool.
And it's called Cannabiz.
Wow, that's dope.
So it's like 60 minutes set in the cannabis industry.
Oh, that's killer.
Yeah.
And what's it looking like? You go to 420.com, you can stream it, or 420tv.com?
420tv.com, look for Cannabiz, and that's 10 episodes, 10 different entrepreneurs, different companies that we feature, and it's a really interesting world right now, and cannabis is helping a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's a real great alternative to the opioids that are really causing a lot of damage to people. So yeah.
And when's that come out?
It's going to come out any day now. I mean,
cool.
we're like on the precipice.
By the time we post this.
Yep. Yeah.
Sweet,
Today is
man.
actually our last shoot. That's why I'm going to bounce in a minute.
Shit.
But yeah, we're wrapping up production on it and should be out within the next month.
Cool, man. And last thing, what's the best way for people to find you online?
Quddus.tv is my website, and I'm Quddus TV on Instagram and on Facebook, and I got I am Quddus at Twitter. So any one of those will do. And yeah, I'm really very open and accessible. I love connecting with people online, and especially if you're up to something inspiring and how I can support you, would be awesome to connect. So yeah.
Great, man. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, pleasure. You're awesome.
That's it for this episode of The Ground Up Show. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support. It means the world to me. This is The Ground Up Show, and this is I think the coolest thing about this was that starting this with 0 listeners, with 0 viewers, besides, my parents and a couple close family and friends. It was a lesson for me to take all the lessons that I've been learning from people like Quddus and being able to put it into practice on this very podcast. So to see it growing, to see people getting value from it has been the most rewarding experience of my life. So thank you so much for being a part of it. If you like the show, if you enjoy it, if you've gotten some value out of it, there's one way to contribute now, which is head over to iTunes, leave a quick review. Down the road, in the next month or two-ish, depending on how I work out some of these long-form projects I'm doing, I'm going to be creating some courses and some ways that I can hopefully add value to creators, those that are trying to level up either on the video side or the business side. And that's going to be something that's you can expect soon, and that'll be the way that you can support this podcast as well, because I'm trying to do this without advertising. I know a lot of people have messaged me saying, "Hey Matt, you should totally do advertising." I don't care. Everybody's used to it, especially on YouTube. You know, it's just status quo. But I want to try. I want to try to do this without advertising. I want to try to do this in a way that I know I would appreciate as a viewer or listener myself. So let's see if we can do that. Let's see if we can make that work. Again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next week.